Welcome to Hockey Nights in Vegas, episode 57. Can the Golden Knights really go 82-0? My name is Eddie Rivkin. I'm joined, as always, by Lindsey Brown of Lotus Broadcasting and Chris Chapman from Fox Sports Las Vegas. This episode, like all, is brought to you by the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com. Your place for everything Las Vegas. If you're looking for a restaurant recommendation, go to the Las Vegas Advisor. If you're looking for show recommendations, go to the Las Vegas Advisor. You need to know how to play blackjack so you don't get your ass handed to you in Las Vegas. Gambling tips are on the Las Vegas Advisor. And by Ageless Forever, www.agelessforever.net. Dr. John Pierce, my very good friend, is the key to your kingdom to make you feel better as a man or a woman. If you have low T, if your hormones are imbalanced, if you've got any sort of thing that makes you feel older than you are, you need to look up my good friend, Dr. John Pierce, at www.agelessforever.net. With that, boys and girls, before we're off, we have to deal with a very important issue. We had a complaint in the comments on the last episode.
About what?
Some person, a subscriber, and we like subscribers, so don't forget to hit subscribe. We have 193 subscribers. The 200th subscriber is going to win a very special VGK prize pack. I'm going to dump off some of the swag. What are they going to win, you ask? The 200th subscriber is going to win a complete set of Golden Knights gold statues that were given out in last year's preseason games. I just don't have any more room for the
shout out to my buddy Andrew, who just started following us recently over the weekend. So I turned him on, and he liked what he heard. So he started following. He subscribed one by one.
Okay, we have to deal with a complaint. Lindsey. One of our loyal listeners was absolutely appalled that you swore on the last episode.
Me? Well, me?
They said Lindsey Brown is the beacon of common sense, the niceness, and the brains behind the podcast. But we absolutely cannot believe that she started cussing like those two savages that she's on the podcast with.
Well, we're fucked, guys. We're fucked. I'm really happy that we have a subscriber. I love the fact that somebody took the time in to write a complaint. I would like to say that this is a shared swear jar, and so let's keep that in mind. And if you're attuned to only me doing it, your sensitivity meter might be a little bit off, at least where you're only noticing one person doing it. So either way, very happy that we're here. Happy that we can take our freedoms with our language in the podcast sphere, and I'll just keep doing
I love the fact that the complaint was Lindsey saying fuck.
That you guys literally led. Like, what? I know where this is. I know where this is going. We don't need to go there. I know. Welcome. We're happy that you're here. I'm going to say fuck sometimes. Sorry.
Hey, guess what? Just joking. I was just trying to get Lindsey to swear again.
Oh, Jesus. Don't do that to me. I already got people coming for me on Twitter today, man.
They're angry.
Please don't come at me like. I don't like calling for people's firing, so I think it's disrespectful to do so, and so people are up in arms with my.
Hey, listen, as a diehard New York Jets fan,
did you call for me to get fired from this podcast? What did I miss?
No. People are mad that I'm not willing to go to bat and say Josh McDaniels should be fired as the head coach of the Raiders, and that I'm not spending every show saying that, doing that, because I do the hockey, I do the football. We're in a eclectic mix of talent.
As a diehard New York Jets fan, if you're going to fire Josh McDaniels, wait until November 13th to do it, because I really like my Jets' chances against this Raider team.
Okay, enough of that other sport. Kids, the Vegas Golden Knights have started the season 7-0, which is the best start in the history of the NHL for a defending Stanley Cup champion. when we last spoke, they had 4 pretty dominating efforts against Seattle and a bunch of sea creatures and the galaxy and stuff like that. But these last 3 games, they get the win. Points are points. They're banking them, and it's fantastic. But they were not typical Vegas Golden Knights wins. We use that phrase, get to their game. And they were soundly outplayed a little bit in Chicago. Definitely outplayed a little bit in Winnipeg. And last night's game, it was a typical John Tortorella coached hockey game. It was ugly. It was monotonous. It was grimy and slimy. I think I said the word slog last night more times than I have in my lots of years of existence. Do we have any concern whatsoever, or this is just how it's going to be? Teams are going to give the Golden Knights their best shot, and there are going to be nights where it's not all happy highlights, and we just enjoy the ride while we're on it.
Look, it's the NHL. It's a grind. Every game is a grind in this league, and certainly those 3 games that you mentioned, Winnipeg, Chicago, and last night against Philadelphia, the Golden Knights won because of their individual talent, and they won because of individual plays. The plays like Paul Cotter, Shea Theodore's just missile through the defense in the final minute of the game last night. A couple big overtime goals in Winnipeg and Chicago. But I mean, they're not going to go 82-0. But I also wonder if there's a little bit of, I don't want to say hangover, right? But you tied that record, then you broke the record, and maybe a little bit of playing down to your competition. Look, the Chicago Blackhawks are not a good team. However, they have some pretty good individual talent, and certainly Connor Bedard is I would say 7 games or 2 weeks into his NHL career, living up to the expectations. In fact, I can't wait to see this kid on Friday afternoon. Winnipeg, look, they still have a lot of really good players. Kyle Connor, one of my favorite players in the league to watch. But what's concerning in that game is it wasn't Connor Hellebuck in net. It was Laurent Brossoit. The Golden Knights were still able to score enough goals, obviously, to win that game. But I thought last night was a situation where Philadelphia came in, nothing to lose, right? Like, they're not supposed to be a good team. They're not supposed to be in the playoffs. But it's a young team with a lot of really good, seems like, players, and they've already bought in to John Tortorella and his system. And that team played their ass off last night. And I don't say this often, but there's not a lot of teams that come into T-Mobile where they're not good, and you walk away saying, you know what, that's a team that deserved a point. Like, Philadelphia absolutely deserved to get out of there last night with the point. I thought they were better than Vegas in a lot of parts of the game. I thought their young players really stepped up and played up to the competition. And, it's unfortunate. Look, like I made the comment to you last night, Eddie, that the Golden Knights don't give a shit if the Flyers get a point. It means nothing to them. Philadelphia deserved the point, and I applaud them. I came away really impressed with that team, with how hard they play. And look, they're not going to be a playoff team, but I will say I think they're gonna be a real pain in the ass for a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, Philly's definitely still in foundation laying mode, and that's what I think Tort specializes in, is getting out the infection and then cleaning it out and then setting a team on a good course. And he's a tough guy to play for, and so I think they finally got some guys in the locker room that understand what that price is and then what you get out of it if you commit to it. I don't think it's dissimilar to what Bruce Cassidy did with the Golden Knights last year. Now, the method's a little bit different. I think we all saw the picture last year during training camp out of the Flyers camp where one of the guys was laying on his back on the ice, and how it is if you don't take a knee on the ice, Eddie. You're just laying on the back, and for a professional athlete to do that, that he's literally fighting for his life right there. And so last night's game and the other games, I'm not worried about it literally at all. Because this time of the season, you're still getting your feet back under you. You're not going to play a full 60-minute effort where it's lights out all the time. And when does that happen in hockey anyway? I mean, they're the Stanley Cup champions. They're a great hockey team, but it's a slog every single night, no matter who you're playing. Because like you guys said, there's an added bump to everybody's game of bringing their best against the champions. And so they keep finding ways to win. And the thing that I think makes me the most optimistic about their continuation of this until they figure out their overall team game is that you're getting it in different areas. You're getting scoring from different guys up and down the lineup. The fourth line is a threat. I was watching last night and just kind of thinking, I'm like, how many people are getting scoring chances on the fourth line low to high? Like Nick Waugh, who had that one that just went right by that left post from Carter Hart, right? How many lines can do that and can leverage that point of the lineup the way that they do? And so that's why you don't need to have everybody at their best game every night. You just need enough right now. And that's fine, because there is something to be said about efficiently skating around the ice if you're a defenseman, if you're playing long minutes, right? I'm gonna choose my spots a little bit carefully. I'm not gonna be so reckless on my pinches and stuff, but I'm gonna figure out a way to get the job done. And I think that's what the Golden Knights are in the mode of doing right now, at least from an overall team standpoint.
Let's spend a couple of minutes talking about Chapman's man crush.
Oh, who's this?
Barbashev took a little bit of heat for his lack of, I guess, results, you might want to call it, over the first 6 games. And we were talking about it a little bit in the press box last night. And he had a fantastic playoff, but he was on a line with the guy who led the Stanley Cup playoffs in assists. Well, he's on the same line this year with the guy who's leading the NHL in shots attempted, Jack Eichel.
Right.
So I think listen, I went off on a rant and I heard about, I should just not be the gatekeeper of things and stuff like that. But in my opinion, that criticism is just silly. I mean, he plays in a line with Jack Eichel and Jonathan Marchessault. And when Jack Eichel is instructed by the coach, still be selective, but we'd like you to shoot more, somebody's production has to go down.
There's a pecking order to this.
What?
There's a pecking order to this. Like, if you're on a line with Jack Eichel and Jonathan Marchessault, I'm shooting last. I don't care who it is. And so I think that's more of we look at numbers and look at that as our only source of production. It's the only way we can tell if somebody's contributing. But the fact that they've been such a threat, that they've been so lethal early on, and he gets that goal, he starts scoring off last night in the same manner that everybody else on that line has been setting each other up, that low to high look, that rotation, that crash, waiting just for the right moment to interject close to that crease with a really great follow through that understands gapping, understands where the goaltender is. It's all happening like this. Like, we've seen Marshy score goals like that. We see Jack score goals like that. We see them set up. And so he's going to get his. And he's already getting it enough, I think, to set up his other 2 line mates pretty well. Like, look at the unit, right? Look at the unit, Chapman.
Well, the thing with I feel like the unwarranted criticism of Barbashev is the line has not failed to produce. Like, you look at Marchessault and Eichel, and those guys have done everything that's been expected of them 7 games into the season. By the way, 7 games into the season. Like, if the whole line was tanking, right, then maybe you're like, well, why is it not working? But the fact that those other 2 guys have basically done what you expect of them. Look, as you mentioned, Eddie, Eichel leads the league in shots. Jonathan Marchessault has never been shy about shooting the puck. Barbashev's goal last night, it was so typical of what he does and what he does well. If you watch him on that play, he goes down into the corner, then he, dirty area, right? Get to the corners. Then he is just kind of somehow gets to the middle of the ice without anyone even knowing he's there. And it was basically like a tap-in, the goal that he scored, to use a golf term. It was a tap-in. Like, he was right there in front of the net. Like, there's a lot of guys who don't get to the front of the net for whatever reason. Barbashev never shy about getting to the front of the net, never shy about going into the corners, never shy about laying someone on their ass. This isn't going to be the Calgary Flames from 2 years ago, where you had 3 guys on your top line all scoring 30 goals. The Golden Knights don't need Ivan Barbashev to score 30 goals, especially when he's on a line with Jack Eichel and Jonathan Marchessault, who probably will score 30 goals. Barbashev, like I said, if the line was not producing, maybe you say, well, something might be wrong. But when I see people saying stuff like, oh, typical Russian player, he gets his big contract and he doesn't show up. First of all, how could you say he's not showing up? And second of all, I feel like it's a little unfair when you lump all Russian players together by saying, oh, well, they get his contract. Like the norm for years was European players don't care enough about the Stanley Cup. Well, Ivan Barbashev's got 2 of them. So clearly he cares enough about winning to the point where he's played on 2 teams that have won the Stanley Cup. And by the way, he was an unbelievable asset to the Golden Knights last year in those Stanley Cup playoffs. So unwarranted. I'm not concerned. You nailed it, Eddie. I have a man crush on Ivan Barbashev. Like, I love watching him play. I just really enjoy him. And you know, he just strikes me as just a cool customer, right? But when he's on the ice, you gotta pay attention to where he's at, because he gets to the dirty areas, and if you're not paying attention, he's gonna knock the shit out of you. I love players like that, and I'm not concerned at all.
Let me ask a quick question, not long answers. Is 30, 35, 40 points and plus 25 a good enough season for Barbashev at $5 million? Or what does he need to do to post? What kind of stat line does he need to post to I don't want to say justify the $5 million, but to sort of, I mean, if he's going to be the third wheel on the line as far as scoring goes, and it appears that's going to be, what sort of stat line is Barbashev? Would you say he's had a good season for the Golden Knights?
I mean, I'm not one that bases your value on how many goals you score. I know that that's a pretty common thing to do, and it's probably pretty a smart thing to do, but I just think he does so much for the 2 guys that he skates with. And so I'm going to give him some leeway on not scoring, and for the reasons that we've already discussed in terms of the pecking order. And so if he gets 20 goals, I'm chill. Like, I'm chill. And I think those are going to come. I think he's going to blow that out of the water, actually. But if I'm going to Barbashev, I'm not going to him with the intention of saying, like, you need to score tonight. You need to find a way to the score sheet tonight. I go to him if I'm Bruce Cassidy or whoever else has coached him up, or he knows this. I need you to make an impact tonight. Be that with your body. Be that with skating with your line mates. You're not dragging them back. Be that in making smart decisions. And he knows what to do. I'm looking at their stats as a line. They've scored 5. They've let up 4. And so maybe you could say be a little bit more responsible so we can get a better gap there in terms of your plus minus. But I really don't set numerical expectations for people when they sign a contract, especially with what we saw from him in playoffs and what he was able to do in leveling up 2 of the high-end scorers that just weren't really sticking with anybody else. I mean, we tried Jack Eichel with Mark Stone for a long time, and it was okay, but it was disjointed. Like the way the Golden Knights are moving through the neutral zone right now, and just in different ways and on different lines, I think is so impressive and a huge reason why they're scoring to the degree and covering up for some of the deficiencies that they're having right now. And when you have guys that know when to turn up the ice subconsciously without having to communicate it, you just know and you see that flow. That's an invaluable thing. You could put all stars together and they don't have that, right? And so chemistry for me is the biggest thing that he brings to this team. And so whatever, as long as Eichel and Marshy are reaching their spots, I'm fine with whatever.
Yeah, I don't really feel like, again, you put a number on his points, you know, like, to me, what he brings is a little bit more valuable. Like, I don't want to say it's such an overused term about keeping the flies off the honey, right? Like, that's not Ivan Barbashev's game. But what he does is he's sneaky and dangerous enough to where you have to respect him enough to where I think it maybe takes a little bit away from you paying attention to what to what Marchessault and Eichel are doing on the ice. Look, they only had 7 guys last year who scored more than 40 points. So it's not like they had guys who were just ripping up the stat sheet in terms of points. I think
great point.
As long as you're getting production out of him and Eichel and Marchessault aren't lacking production, I feel like that justifies it. Like if he becomes a liability, then you start to say, all right, maybe there's a problem. But I don't see Ivan Barbashev as a liability. I don't ever think I'm going to see him as a liability because the 2 guys he's playing with, all 3 of those guys understand exactly what their role is on that line. Ivan Barbashev's role is not to be the guy who's going to score 30 goals. He knows that. Jack Eichel knows that. He's going to be there to clean up. And he's going to score a lot of goals cleaning up. You need that guy to be able to put the puck in the net when it rebounds off the goalie's chest and it comes to you right in front of the net. There's a lot of guys who can't do that. Ivan Barbashev's good at that. He's got to be the garbage man. And look, the garbage man isn't – nobody looks at the garbage man and says that's a glorious job. Ivan Barbashev doesn't have to be glorious. He just has to be good enough to where Eichel and Marchessault are able to do what they want to do and what they need to do for this team to be successful. So I don't think you put a number on. I don't think you say, oh, well, he's got to have 50 points or, Mike, I keep coming back to it. As long as the production is there for the line, I don't care how many points he has. That's irrelevant to me.
Okay, let's pivot. I'm not going to call him my man crush. He's just my guy. Paul Cotter from my hometown.
Hell yeah.
Right?
Hell yeah.
But aside from the arguably best goal in the 7 years of the Golden Knights, and we'll talk a little bit about that. There's a couple of nominees for the best goal in the franchise. But last night, besides the absolute filthy highlight reel goal where the defenseman from Philadelphia is still at T-Mobile looking for his jockstrap in the face-off circle.
Because it was ripped out.
Bruce Cassidy had some really interesting things to say about Paul Cotter after the game. Coach Cassidy shortened the bench a bit in the second period. He didn't kind of like the flow. And he called the people who didn't get as much ice time, they were sort of the victims of it. Paul Cotter was one of those 2 wingers when Carlson started moving up and the lines went from 4 to 3. But Bruce Cassidy said afterward, maybe last year he would have disengaged a little bit when he was quote unquote benched for a spell in the second period. But he complimented Paul Cotter on his growth, on the maturity of staying engaged in the time where he wasn't getting the ice time. And I mean, that shift that led to the tying goal was 7.5 minutes to go in the third period last night. He blows a tire at the blue line, but doesn't give up. Gets up, jets down the wing, and we all know what happened after that, and we'll go ahead and put that video in. If you haven't seen it last night, it was arguably the filthiest goal in Golden Knights history, and certainly the filthiest goal in the NHL this year.
Into the skates of Carlson center circle. Cotter back on his blades with speed between the legs.
But let's talk about my guy Paul Cotter. He's growing up. He's more physical now. He's played a little bit up and down the lineup, 2, 3, and 4 on the lines. It's an awfully good value for $850,000 a year, right? How's our guy Paul Cotter doing? And the first guest on the Hockey Nights in Vegas podcast, I'll have you know, and maybe the next one.
I'm really impressed with what he's been able to accomplish in that maturity step that he's clearly taken, because ultimately when you kind of talk to yourself as a player and you're going back and forth, I should be getting more ice time, but have I earned it, blah, blah, blah. Bruce Cassidy's got a pretty good roadmap, right? He's figured out a way to elevate the games of some of the biggest superstars. And Also, he knows how to bring along players that weren't exactly the chosen ones, right? I don't think he was technically a chosen one either. And so when he asks you to do something or asks you to make a sacrifice, I think there's a while where you push back on it, but then when you see the result, when you're part of the Black Aces over the course of the Stanley Cup run, how do you not just trust whatever he said? Whatever you need me to do, whatever contribution I can make, because he's a guy that played a lot of games for this team last year and didn't see the ice until they put on their stuff to raise the Stanley Cup around, like all the other guys that didn't play. And I think that does something to elicit a different hunger, finding a different level within you now that you're in professional sports. You see the tangibility of your dream and wanting to be a bigger part of making that your reality, because they earned their names in the cup. I'm not going to discount them for that at all. But you want to be a bigger part of the solution. And so I think the maturity that most players go through when either you break into a level, break in with a new coach, just starting out, is there's a humbling, and then there's an inspiration point. And some coaches are really good at the humbling, but they're not good at the inspiration point. Some good coaches are really good at the inspire, but they don't know how to take the reins when things start to get out of control. And that's why I think Bruce Cassidy is so effective, and why you see players like Cotter and Eichel finding a different layer of responsibility to their game, to not get caught up in the fact that they don't play very much for a period, to not get caught up in the fact that they're not scoring for a few games. Because if you stick to this roadmap, if you stick to the process, if you're married to that process, eventually good results are going to come because you're talented and we got a good roadmap. And so to see the goal that he scored last night, he's such an interesting player from the offensive blue line below, right? Because I would say that Stone, Stevenson, and Howden get up the ice really well, maybe a little bit less messy. But I think that Cotter has this really unique knack for knowing what shot to shoot. To shoot. Does that make sense? And it's not just shoot as hard as you possibly can or pick a corner. Sometimes it's a little bit of a fluffer. Sometimes it takes a big move. But you're a kid that's barely done anything in the league and you're willing to try that. There's a lot of pushback to Tomas Hertl a few years ago when he broke in as a rookie, because remember his opening night, he went like between the legs and scored the goal. People were pissed as hell. They're like, how could you, this flashy? And this is 10, 12 years ago. Hockey's in a much different place than it was. But you have to respect that cockiness, right? Of just be like, fuck yeah, I'm going to pull this. Like, yeah, I'm going to try this. And sometimes that can get your ass in trouble. Like sometimes if you're doing that and you're not doing the right defensive stuff, you're going to be on the bench for more reasons that are your fault than the overall flow of the game. But I think he knows how to pick his spots of when to take those chances. And man, he's a nice little weapon underneath, an underrated weapon for him to be a goal scorer, because he's great in shootouts. He's great on breakaways. He's not afraid to shoot. And that used to be a commodity that was in short supply on this team. It used to be a pass.
It's funny, Lindsey, because I'm listening to your comments and I have to go back and re-listen to exactly what Paul Cotter told me. But I asked him about having the confidence to try that move where you basically undress a guy. And his comments to me pretty much echoed exactly what you said. First of all, he told me it's a move he's done in practice. He knew exactly what he was doing. He felt confident doing it. And then the other aspect is he said, you just have to be able to pick your moment to be able to pull it off. And, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's amazing when I listen to you and then I think about exactly what he told me, because I asked him last night about, just being able to I didn't say have the balls, but that's really what I want to ask him. Like, where does that come from, that to have the balls to be able to even try that move? You blow the tire, you get up, you get the puck, and then you completely leave a guy naked trying to prevent a play. Then I asked him about, because he's an energy guy, and I asked him about, is that something when you're in the moment that you're able to grasp while it's happening? And he told me no. He said, you don't feel it in the moment. He said, you just kind of black out and you just let things go, and you just are a hockey player. You're not in that moment. So it's really interesting. But I want to also bring up what Eddie was talking about with the growth. Not only has he grown maturation wise, as you know, we got to remember he's only 23 years old. Like Paul Cotter is only he's only 23. Now his birthday is in about 2 weeks, middle of November. He's going to turn 24. But he's already accomplished a ton in his career. But we're only beginning to scratch the surface, I feel, of Paul Cotter, the player, the human being, because, you know, this is a kid who made his debut 2 seasons ago. And he shows up to the rink wearing a fedora. Like, you have to be a confident guy to be 22 years old, 21 years old, and you're playing in the NHL and you're rocking a fedora. Like you're a little known guy at that point, but the guy is unafraid. He's not afraid to be who he is. And I feel like a lot of times we get stuck in this rut of we have to be what people expect us to be. And Paul Cotter is 100% confident with who he is off the ice, with who he is on the ice. And I feel like there's a correlation to him being 100% cool with the dude he is away from the rink, carrying over to being 100% confident with the dude he is on the ice. Like, he's a fun guy, and he's a great guy to talk to. But, man, he is there's something about him as a guy where you're like, you know what? He's a good dude. And you respect the hell out of a guy like that because his journey to the league was not easy, right? He had to go through a lot of hoops to even get an opportunity. Then last year coming into camp, we didn't think it was his job, right? It was him, Jonas Rondbjerg, Jake Lecision. And Paul Cotter took advantage of that opportunity. And look, I know the 3 of them are close friends, but Paul Cotter basically told those other 2 guys with this play, listen, we're friends, but I'm taking your job. And Jake Lecision is, I don't know where he's at. I know he was picked up by the Rangers. I'm not sure if he's still there. And then Jonas Rondbjerg is still in Henderson, although he's a good enough player to where when the team needs someone, they're very confident calling him up as well. But there's just something special about this kid. And I love seeing it because I just enjoy talking to him so much. But he's also a guy who he's grown. And the maturation of, well, maybe he would have disengaged. Well, yeah, because he was 22. You know, that's what when I was 22, I wasn't all in either. I mean, I didn't know what the hell I was doing at 22. So, you know, there's just something about it. And look, we're going to see a lot more growth from him. And I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to be an all-star, but he's going to get to a point in his career where he's an invaluable member of the Golden Knights. And I feel like we're already close to that because he keeps the room loose. And I feel like he keeps the veterans loose and he allows guys like Martinez to lead, but he's still confident enough that he can give them some shit when he needs to. I know you said short answer.
Yeah, he's cocky little brother energy. Like y'all need like a little mini punching bag. Only I can beat up on him, not you, right? It's that type of energy.
So the next segment is it took 7 games for the Golden Knights to give up a softie, and the second goal that Philadelphia scored was a backhand from below the dot that was going so far wide that it was going to hit the sidewall instead of the cornerboard. It's a hate
yourself goal against. It's a hate yourself goal against.
Yeah. So we'll use just that little tidbit, and we're not going to rub it into Logan Thompson, but we're going to pivot to the goaltending section of episode 57. Lindsey, this is your this is all you.
This is my moment.
This is your moment in the sun. Swear away.
I was going to say I should lead with a fuck at this point, but my notes really weren't centered around that goal against, but I can get into those after kind of going through it and just what we kind of talked about last week and how rebounds react differently off of Adin Hill versus Logan Thompson, because Adin Hill is much more let the play come to me. I'm going to sink back. especially down low. If that puck's coming through from the outside, he's going to swallow up, and there's not going to be a lot of rebounds. He's really good at keeping things tight. Whereas Logan Thompson, he's an interjector. He goes and attacks angles most of the time, whether that's with his legs or last night, he didn't really attack with his legs. You're not really supposed to at that point either because you're supposed to be on that post, but he went out. He's left-handed, so his left hand is his blocker side, right? Because he catches with his right. Or I should say he's right-handed. He's a weird one. And so he went out and he just missed. And maybe it's because he's from more of a static stance because it's so awkward angles, you said, below the hashes. It's a backhand play. It's supposed to be a garbage save that you just make and move on. But he goes out, he gets a little bit ahead of it. It goes off your own, and you're sitting there thinking, Jesus, I just did that, didn't I? And I don't know what it feels like to do that in front of 18,000 people, but he did it. And so impressed with his ability to bounce back last night because as much as Paul Cotter would have disengaged last year, I could see Logan Thompson letting in a goal like that and just like slamming his stick over the crossbar, going to the corner all angry and shit. And you have reason to be angry because when you let in a goal like that, I would hate myself as well. Girl, I've been there. I've been there multiple times. But you have to have that stoicism, that never too high, never too low. And I think that he has to be a little bit more cognizant of that this season because he's not 1A. And so when you go in, you have to be, I think he just has to be a little bit cleaner in how he handles himself. And so I'm proud of him for doing it that last night. But I wanted to talk about goaltenders more from the goal that we saw being scored by Barbashev in that low to high play and how much we've seen that from the Golden Knights offense so far. And last year, Bruce Cassidy made a concerted effort to move that offense from the defenseman. It was mostly ran through defensemen during that year we missed the playoffs because so many people were hurt. Alex Pietrangelo was just dipsy doodling at the top and then sending it to the net and hoping for a prayer that it would dink off someone and it would go in. But now you want to be as low as possible in that zone. Why? Because it's defensively responsible. It's the furthest place you can be from a scary turnover at the offensive blue line, which is one of the worst places on the ice to turn a puck over. And it's offensively tricky for goaltenders because I feel that there's been an evolution in the type of athletes that have started to become goaltenders. It's kind of started with Ben Bishop, and all of a sudden we see these giants where they're 6'6", 6'7", these very long-bodied individuals. Logan Thompson's one of them. But with that comes different limitations. And so while they're going to be able to get across the crease a lot easier and probably save some one-timers on the power play, which scoring has definitely been going in that direction, you're going to be challenged as a netminder by your depth, like coming out from the goal line and getting space and setting your skates or your weight for you to make the save, because the worst place for a goaltender to be when a save comes at them is in transition, is in movement. And so I think that they might have keyed in on that, or maybe they're making a concerted effort to target that and challenge the depth and the edge setting, because you'd be surprised how much space is created from the puck moving from low to high. And then you can get different angles as well. Because I think about that goal Mark Stone scored last year in the Stanley Cup final where he threw the brakes on and then he lifted it right over Bobrovsky's left shoulder at that point, right? So when the goaltender is gapping back, you as a shooter want to elevate that puck. You're going to have more room to elevate because when you shoot it and versus when it goes over the line, there's going to be more space because the goaltender is still moving back. And then reciprocally, when the goaltender is gapping out, so like I'm talking about the low to high play, you want to shoot low because that's where most of their weight is activated, is low and going out and setting their feet. So they're not going to be able, they're going to have to make two different moves to react fluidly to the save versus when their feet are set. And so some goalies will hang back. They won't gap out as far. It depends on how big they are. But then you see people start targeting post play. Eddie, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago with Aiden Hill, where it seemed like there was a concerted effort around Aiden Hill's glove side, right? And trying to go at that post right on the goal line and trying to catch him to make sure that there aren't any holes. When you have those long goaltenders, it's hard to stack all that limb without any holes in there. And so there's just little ways that you can try to get a little bit ahead of the game. And I think because the Golden Knights are playing with such cohesion, there's a newfound freedom that we've also discussed that Paul Cotter has clearly taken and run with last night, where these guys are allowed to create and buzz and find these different angles and way to score. And that's just fun hockey to play when you have that freedom and it's working for you, because there's sometimes you have that freedom and it's not going in for you. So you got to bank the good stuff now and use it if you should run into a scoring drought later on. Like, what do we get back to? How did we do this earlier on? They're showing the roadmap to success in scoring and taking advantage of some of the trends we've seen in goaltending.
Yeah. I'll just say, I mean, because I certainly can't go in depth and top that, but I was impressed with the way Logan Thompson handled himself after that goal in it. Look, that was the last goal that he allowed. So the fact that it didn't snowball into, disaster, and he played well enough after that to keep the Golden Knights within striking distance, because I firmly believe, and I mean, obviously there's no way to prove this, but if the Golden Knights give up another goal and go down 3-1, they lose that game. Like, I don't think they come back.
Well, that's what we talked about. Next goal, when it was 2-1.
So, Logan Thompson, he'll get some shit probably from the guys for letting that in, but it was how he responded after it. And again, it shows growth and maturation. And look, this team, if they only give up 2 goals a game, they're going to a lot of fucking hockey games, because I mean, you've got the number when they score 3 goals. So
that's that.
It's look, I don't feel like you need Patrick Waugh or Dominic Hasek to win the Stanley Cup. This team has proven that, but you just need your goalies to play well enough to give you an opportunity to win every night. And that's what Adin Hill and Logan Thompson have done, I would say, for basically their entire careers in Vegas. I still to this day cannot look back at one of the games either of those guys have played. And I'll even put Laurent Brossoit in there last year as well, because he deserves a lot of credit for when he played. There was never a game that they lost where I said, man, the goalie just played like shit. And it's still, we're now over 100 games, including the playoffs, into Bruce Cassidy's tenure with the Golden Knights. And there's not one moment where I'm like, yeah, those guys played like shit. The goalies are why they lost. It's not the case. And this team, it's scary to think how well they are able to win games, when they don't give up a lot of goals. Well, I mean, obviously, but they don't need to score a ton of goals in order to win those games either.
I'm going to close this segment with a brief answer. Yes, a brief. I just want to give a shout out to our guy, Sean Burke. He's always the friendliest guy up in the press box. And when you think about it, he's the goalie coach, and his 2 starting goalies, you can call them 1A, 1B, or 1 and 2, or whatever it is, couldn't be more diametrically opposite as far as style goes. And the team's not really going to change that much when it comes to how they play in front of the goalie. Cassidy's system is their system, and that's how they're going to play it. But the fact that Sean Burke has the ability to coach 2 professional athletes with 2 completely divergent styles and still get the optimal result continually, night in and night out. I think that's something that I don't know, maybe it's just heaping some praise, but as somebody who's watched the game for a long time, you realize how special his relationship must be with them and how smart a guy he must be to know how to get into their heads in different ways. Like we've talked about a few times last year, and this is going to sound really awful, but it's sort of what it seemed like. Logan Thompson was a bit of a mental patient. He took losses incredibly hard. He was real chippy with the media. He didn't come out for a bunch of games. And after that second goal went in last night, I looked over at Chap. I said, we're not going to see Logan Thompson after this game, right? Because we figure he might have walked the plank after that goal. But he didn't. And he rebounded, and his head never got out of the game. They didn't get a quick bounce back goal to go down 3-1, which we all thought would have sort of been the death knell of the Golden Knights in the win streak last night. So I'm impressed that the team just continues to do what they do, and that both goaltenders still seem to be flourishing and putting up big statistics. And, listen, if they let in 1 soft goal every 7 games, that's 9-10 soft goals a year. Who gives a rat's ass? I mean, that's nothing burger.
No, and especially with Bruce Cassidy's system. And I think the other thing, or at least another power up that the Golden Knights, I think, developed last year, is that calmness if they do get down. Right now, most of their scoring is taking place in the third period. We've seen that with different teams, different versions of this team in the past, but there's no panic ever in this squad. And I truly believe that they see a 2-3 goal deficit and they're like, I can do that. And who's to say they can't? Because we've seen it before, right? And so I think there's also a trust factor in a goaltender to their team, because you get so worked up that if I let in a bad goal, if I'm less than perfect, everybody else is going to suffer. And sometimes that's the truth. That's one of the hard parts of the position. But the guys in front of them offer such a reprieve, whether that's in the style they play, but also in their ability to go get goals back, to make sure we got you. Like, don't worry about it. Like, just, I think about that as a goaltender. If my team was supporting me like that, and if I had a nervous system that was a little bit overreactive, and just look at where he came from. I mean, he came out of nowhere, right? He fought and clawed his way up the way. And that's not to say the other guys haven't, but his story is so different. And so he's really having to work against the nature that got him here. And so I really want to illuminate that gap, because there's a lot of goaltenders that are never able to make that adjustment. And even if they are able to do that at lower levels, right? Because more stress, higher expectations. Sometimes people just don't figure it out at the NHL level. And we're seeing early returns that he's doing that.
Well, I guess let's end this, since we're on a record pace of only 45 minutes in. Let's end with a prediction. The Golden Knights have started off the season the best of any team in the history of the NHL at 7-0. The record is 10-0. The next games are Chicago on Friday, Los Angeles on Saturday, then Montreal the following Tuesday. So I pose this question to you, fellow co-hosts. Are the Golden Knights going to get to 10, 11, or not?
No.
Chap?
I think they beat Chicago on Friday, but I feel like the night that they travel to LA, it's a back-to-back game. You have a weird kind of start on Friday. I don't know how much that throws you out of your routine, but I feel like LA is kind of like, it's the landmine, so to speak. I mean, look, the Kings are a good team. They're a pain in the ass to play against. They've had this game circled. And for them, knowing that it would be an opportunity to kind of prevent history from happening, then I think for them, it's a bigger game for LA than it is for Vegas. We'll put it that way. And, you know, if the Golden Knights win that game, I don't think they lose a game in October, which would be fucking incredible. Like, I could see, if they get by LA, I could see them being unbeaten by the time they play Colorado, which I think is on November 4th. I think the schedule just lines up nicely for them. They should beat Winnipeg at home. And look, obviously it's the NHL. Anything can happen. And I'm sure we'll see Connor Hellebuck that night. But
for sure,
you look at the next 4 or 5 games, and it sets up nicely. But I do think they lose to LA on Saturday. I just feel like that's a landmine, and the Golden Knights could be dialed in, but I just feel like LA, it means so much more to them, and especially early on, right? They need, because they haven't started well. So for them, they're going to need that little confidence boost, and it's just a tough spot for Vegas. Like, that's the one blip I think that they'll have before they get to that Colorado game, but that's the one I think they lose.
I'm with you, Chap, in terms of the threat of the Kings. I'm trying to think of a team off the top of my head that's put more pressure on itself than the LA Kings, and I'm not really thinking of many others. Maybe like Pittsburgh, but at the same time, we all know Toronto too. But LA has Toronto's built longer, right? They've been building this team for a long time, and if anything, it's been set for a while. LA kind of went the Frankenstein route, where they sacrificed one of their generations, the Iafallos, to make room for the Byfields, the Arthur Kalaevs. They're kind of in a similar situation that the New York Rangers are in, where you need some more from your bottom. But you went out in 3 straight years, you signed big-time free agents to help fortify your forwards. And if this experiment doesn't work, if they're not able to take a massive step, at least first round this year, I think that you have to start asking some questions. And the big thing is that big question at goaltending. We've talked about this before, Chris. I know that you brought up with Cam Talbot, and he's a very streaky netminder. He can get some things done, but I've seen him be had in Edmonton, in Minnesota. He was a little bit injury plagued last year in Ottawa, and that team was very confusing as they were trying to ascend their way through the depths. And so LA, and I think Montreal is going to give them a tough game. Like, I just think those Stanley Cup semifinals, that weird year, and granted, a lot of that team is gone, but that Arbor Jackeye character, I think that he causes a lot of chaos and is going to be looking to dust it up with some of our star players. And that's kind of when you're a bad team, you got to slog it up like we saw with Philadelphia last day. Either make them play hard or make them punch hard, and hopefully you can win a special teams battle or get all their team discombobulated. And so, but they need to play better. They need to play better than these last few games if they want to keep that streak alive.
And
but
look,
it's going to come sooner or later. But
and
knows?
You said,
it could be next one.
You brought up that whatever weird, goofy conference semifinal from a few years ago. The major component, disruptor, pain in the ass in that series for the Canadians is now a major disruptor, pain in the ass for the LA Kings. So Phil Deneau is
Philip Deneau.
I like watching him play. Like he's a good player, and when you respect the game, you really appreciate watching guys like him play. But there's just something about that 1-3-1 that the Kings play, and it's if they get out in front, and look, the last few nights Vegas has given up the first goal. They become so much more difficult to play against. So I don't want to just gloss over Chicago, but I think the Golden Knights will beat the Blackhawks, and I think they beat them fairly easily. But I do think that LA, like we said, is just going to be a tough game.
Well, this section became a complete dud because I think we all realize I don't think they're getting there. But the caveat, in my opinion, is I don't think they give one big fat rat's ass about it.
No, I don't either.
You know what? I think they just go out, they do their job, they play their game, they get their result, and that's the end of it. And speaking of the end, we've run out of things.
You've given the haters something else to hate on, and that's the best start following a Stanley Cup championship. You know, they've broken the record and they've added 2 games to the original record. So, you know, the haters who feel like this team they never went through any adversity. Well, they just gave a giant middle finger to those people. So I'm on board for that.
Another one.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll wrap up episode 57. And I think we called this, Will the Golden Knights Go 82-0? Want to thank our sponsors, the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com, your place to go for anything and everything here in Las Vegas. They even have F1 information if you have an abundance of cash that you're looking to spend and you want to go sit out on the strip at midnight on November 18th and watch cars go round and round. And also Dr. John Pierce, my very, very good friend at agelessforever.net, www.agelessforever.net. He's your go-to guy for health, everything health, not traditional medicine, the smart guy medicine, the ways to get you feeling the best that you can get. Please hit like, please hit subscribe. We have 7 more subscribers to get 200. I don't know what we get from YouTube, but we'll throw a party. The 200th subscriber, and we get them in the order that they come in, will win an exclusive golden statue set from the Golden Knights season, last Stanley Cup winning season last year, courtesy of my swag closet here at my lovely abode.
I'll throw in some posters from year 1 that I still have.
Okay, the prize pack, Lindsey Brown.
No, I got nothing. Nothing that I'm willing to part with. You got to keep listening to get to my prizes.
Oh, geez. Anyway,
mine's a late season.
There's a glorious prize package available for the 200th subscriber. We are on a great run of being with you every week. This episode will probably go up tomorrow, even before the Chicago game. It is a 3 o'clock puck drop. It's Nevada Day. It's a holiday for us, probably not for anybody else. You can't go to your bank. You can't really do much of anything governmentally, but you can tune in to watch the Vegas. Oh, we have one last. We have a special guest.
He's getting so big.
He is.
All right, folks, that's it. Episode 57. Will the Golden Knights go 82-0 is officially a wrap, and we will see you all next week. Take care.